What does it mean to say that we really encounter the other, or that we have been encountered by the other, or that otherness itself is part of what turns consciousness into self aware consciousness? I said before that I think Sartre is really a great resource on this. I want to talk a little bit more about Sartre's ideas and see if I can't lay out a general sense of what we mean to say that others have radicalized consciousness itself. Now, there is a sense in which we're just talking in a vacuum here. I don't think there ever is the mythological one and only one person. There really isn't ever only one and only one consciousness. That itself would be an error. We're perhaps hailed as objects in the world by other beings who aren't even self aware beings. Okay, that said, certainly people interact with their dogs, with their cats, people interact with various levels of the nature around them. I mean, arguably, people interact with their plants, their gardens, their I guess just all parts of the natural world around them. That said, there is a difference, though, between being hailed as another by another in the world and recognizing that one is not the focal center through which all of the world's relations get organized through that center. Suddenly the other reorganizes the relations and is like a different center of being, a different center of perspective that reorganizes all of the world's things into a different set of relations according to that person as the center of perspective, or that organism as the center of the perspective, right? I mean, a gnat, this is Nietzsche, right? A gnat buzzing through the air probably takes itself to be the center of the cosmos in the way that each person does, right? Each organism itself, just by virtue of consciousness, has an orienting horizon within its consciousness that allows itself to be a kind of center that reorganizes all the world's objects into relations that are particularized by that center. Okay, that said, humans encounter others as self-aware others, and that otherness is a depth that gets plunged inside of us. We are otherized from the inside out. To learn to speak, to learn to respond to what others say, is to emerge with a kind of estranged consciousness. Human consciousness is always haunted by not only the not only are we the way the world haunts itself as another, it's that we ourselves are haunted by another. The other is other people in general. Our consciousness is caught not only in being the gap or the fissure by which the world makes room for itself, but within that sense of self that we have, I am a self that's over against the world, that self is a self who's been otherized, who can experience guilt and shame. Do other animals experience guilt and shame? Oh, I certainly think domesticated dogs do, and other creatures, the more that we sort of respond to them in ways that bring it out. But then again, I've seen a dog eat its own turd or mistake a turd for a piece of food without even thinking about it. So there seems to be varying levels. Certainly, I've seen a dog be embarrassed, right? Feel shame, or at least exhibit what we would call shame. That itself is fascinating, right? There is a sense of that expressiveness being from a recognition of being hailed by the other, of existing for the other rather than just for oneself. Okay, I think part of the way then to ask the question is, what exactly is the other, and how do others, by way of language, bring us into a new kind of being? To what extent were the most fateful decisions of our lives who those others were who opened us into the otherness of others? each of us not only was otherized by another, but that the particular others make all the difference. I think Sartre's distinctions of sadism and masochism bring this out so well. Parenting styles tend to break along those different categories. That some parents really, not categorically, but in some way they'll suggest that the person adopts a kind of who cares what other people think about you. And other people will really cultivate a you should be very concerned how others see you. And I think you have to do both. It is a balance. I think a healthy person recognizes both the sadistic and the masochistic tendencies that people have, but there is a struggle to come to terms with what it means to have part of our being for others. The question in all cases, I think, is the consequences. What are the consequences of the kinds of lives that we live? I can imagine, right, at either extreme, the sadist or the masochist really becomes quite trouble, and yet to not have either of those tendencies at all, it almost that doesn't even make any sense, right? There has to be some amount of recognizing oneself as a subject in the world, and some amount of recognizing oneself as an object for others. That's a thing amidst their world. Now, I think the most interesting aspect of otherness then becomes, what is the we? What's the difference between the I and the you, or the sense of subject and object, and then the collectivist we? Because now we start to get into a much more interesting sense of what it means to be otherized. We start to see that to be otherized is to be so otherized from the inside out that what we come to take the subject is no longer a original univocal subject. It's a dialogic subject. It's a subject who's emerged in dialogue, and now its most inner, deepest recesses of self are already a tapestry of many other voices. It's a coming together of history and those particular others that we spoke with, all of the things that we've read. The sense of self that emerges is certainly a consciousness, which is a consciousness that the world itself does to make room for itself. So each of us is a place and moment of the universe haunting itself as another. But from within there, that rippling intersection of all of the others who are suffering from that internal negation, that fissure, that crack, well, now we're intersecting, and I am otherized by the others who are around me. Each person reorganizes, centers the universe itself around itself, and from all of that intersection, I become hailed as another, but soon enough, the others that hailed me become the self that then forms a we that relates to different levels of others. I think all said and done, please, if you haven't, go read some Jean-Paul Sartre. I really think Being and Nothingness is an underestimated text. It's a very thick tome. It's a difficult work, but it is worth it to try to get at Sartre's very important ontology, which mistakenly, too often, is treated as if it's just being and nothingness. Maybe it was a bad title, but it's being, there's being in itself, being for itself, and being for others. It is a tripart, and that's it. Okay, thanks.